Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Ethics Experts. And if you're a subscriber, then hey, I'm so glad you're here for the Ethics Experts. And that's what you get if you subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. In every show, you're going to get an extra special welcome to the Ethics Experts. Today, we have a great show with Emily Frank. We talk about her experience across a range of industries, from mining to retail to automotive, how she's worked at a company with like 10 or 20,000 employees and a company that started at 25 employees, and how she's applied the basic building blocks of a compliance program across a range of company sizes and around company growth. We talk about engaging middle managers, investing in yourself as a professional, and we talk about the ways that you can be creative, depending on the size of your team, to really get that program running or get that program improving if you come into a role that's already there. So I'm excited to get into this conversation, and I hope you get a lot of value out of our conversation with Emily Frank.
Welcome to the Ethics Experts, where we're elevating ethics and compliance and HR to the strategic level it's supposed to be.
Hey, Emily. So thanks for coming on the show today. We've been super looking forward to having you on the Ethics Experts. Why don't you start out and just tell us how you got into this spot? What brought you into compliance? And, why do you think that this role and this career is a fit for you?
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Gio. Appreciate you guys having me here. I really like working in compliance, which is, good for a compliance professional, but definitely not something that I saw myself doing when I was a little kid. I don't know right now if there's anybody in the compliance field that was like, yep, I'm going to grow up to be a compliance officer. I'd like to think that the next generation is going to have that, but I was one of, I'm sure, many people who went to undergrad and then didn't know what to do with their lives. So were like, I'm going to go to law school. And then I actually looked at the cost of law school and I thought, you know what? I'm going to hold off on that. I'm going to start working and see, just like maybe if I work for attorneys, I'll decide I like it or love it or hate it or whatever. So I kind of did that. I bounced around to a bunch of different law firms working as a legal assistant, paralegal, and lucked into a very large law firm in Denver they had such a huge client base that they had to have a new business intake department. So they had to run conflicts of interest on all of their new clients. There were ethical considerations for some attorneys who had clients that were no longer clients, or attorneys that were working in the same department that had, conflicting clients and things like that. So that was kind of my first introductory compliance experience in a really very removed kind of way, not the corporate compliance that I live and breathe today.
Yeah, you kind of didn't even know you were getting into it. You're dipping your toe in the water.
No, I honestly applied for the role because it was like conflicts analyst or something. And I was like, I'm great at solving conflicts, thinking interpersonal conflicts. I was like, I'm going to be like a therapist or something. I had no idea what I was stepping into. It was definitely one of those, I'm putting my resume out there because why not? Yeah. And in the interview, the hiring manager was like, so I don't think you're thinking of what this actually is. And I was like, oh, okay, well, what is it then? And then when he explained it, and I was like, okay, actually, that sounds way more up my alley than what I thought you were going to try to get me to do. But I was game. I was fully on board with whatever was going to get thrown my way. So yeah, that gave me my first taste. And then I took that experience and kind of translated it into a more corporate environment. And that was working in the mining sector. And then I've gone from mining to retail, now retail to automotive, and have gathered quite a lot of information and experience along the way. So, but very roundabout way of getting into compliance for sure.
Yeah, well, you're in great company because, I think everyone has kind of found their way here, or, they didn't choose the game chose them. And then, we find out where we fit, and we start thriving in it. And you've certainly done that. So, what was it about that first job in, specifically, legal conflicts about customers that made you feel like, hey, I want to get deeper into this and then go into corporate compliance?
I think it was that on paper, there were clear-cut rules, right? There's laws against who attorneys can represent and who they can't represent, and like how they have to approach those conflicts. But in reality, in the workings of things, it's very much like, okay, well, what do we need to do to like make this happen, and how can we fit within the parameters of what's allowed and not allowed? And so it was really looking at like, okay, well, who's going to be working on these things, and how can we create ethical walls between file owners and things? Like it was just, there was so much more than just like black and white on the paper and on the page. And it was a little bit like a little bit of detective work, like figuring out like who's worked on it and how long ago was it, and are all the same parties involved? And then like trying to figure out like, okay, how are we going to make this moving forward so it's everybody's, doing the right thing. So it was kind of fun, if if that's the right way to say it.
You're allowed to say, on the ethics experts, you can say that. If you say that at like a cocktail party, like they probably start shrinking away. But
Yes.
a
Yes.
bunch of people in the audience here are like, yeah, I know that is.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah. So it was fun to me. It was interesting, and it was different, and it wasn't just typing up legal documents and answering phones, and I don't know. It was just different enough that I thought, this is really cool, and I really like this. And so I actually think that my getting hired on at the mining company was, good personality fit. They saw some of the experience that I was bringing in, but also like, oh, we can train her, we can teach her, we can show her. And I absorbed that as much as I could. So it was taking the like, yep, I understand what conflicts of interest are, and I understand that there are rules that we kind of have to play by, but every industry is a little bit different. And so it's kind of figuring out what the rules of the game are for each of the different industries, and moving forward from there. So
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you've mentioned a few things that, just seem like a theme for me, but you've said them in really compelling ways. At the first job, you said that, you thought it was one thing, and then it became, you realized it was another, and you said, all right, I'm down to jump in, and I'm down to, kind of be helpful wherever I can be. And then in the mining job, you said that, you didn't have all the experience, but you were teachable and you could learn. And then, across that, you talked about bringing order to chaos. That's, those are my words, not yours, but you said, hey, there are some of these rules and we have to discover them or figure out the right way to apply them. But then we can do that and make things better at the end of it. I think, I think that's honorable, because a bunch of people see those types of problems and they're like, hey, that's really messy. Give me something that's more predictable. And you've accomplished a lot and brought a lot of good to the world and to the companies that you've worked in. But those things that you talked about, I think that's really common across the ethics space, of people see that and say, hey, I don't know exactly how to do that, but I'm going to jump in. And I think that's a strength that you have, and that a lot of people in this space have.
I agree. And I think that's kind of where compliance grew from, right? It was attorneys being told, hey, we need to have a compliance department. Law, go figure it out, right? I mean, I've heard so many stories of some amazing people in the compliance arena being told just that. And so I think it is definitely a personality trait of those of us who are here, that it's like, here's a problem, go figure it out. Or here's a mess, go sift through it, make it look better, and tell us what to do next. And I do think that there's a variety of personalities in compliance, but it's definitely one of those where somebody's going to like jump in and say, yeah, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna take care of that for you. So.
Yeah, I have no idea what that is, what's inside that mess, but I'll jump into it. I'll figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. And every time is a little different. So
yeah. And it keeps it a little spicy,
Let's keep it a little spicy.
So you've had a cool set of experiences, the law firm, a mining company, a retail company, and then what is the last one is real estate, right? Automotive. So talk to me a little bit about that. Talk to me about how those environments, especially with those last three where you've been corporate compliance across these different industries, what have you seen as the commonalities that are kind of the lingua franca of, you got to do it everywhere? And where have you seen, maybe tactically, but especially just kind of culturally, what it takes to push compliance forward in those environments?
Yeah, I mean, I think in all of those environments, you see the struggle of what's the return on investment on compliance. Like what are we putting money into, and how do you prove that it's worth it? And then also just some of the requirements that the business needs, conflicts of interest disclosures, gifts and entertainment registries, online or in-person training, all of those like little pieces that make up a program. It's all across the same, it's all across every industry. So every industry might have slightly different, regulatory requirements around what does the training say, or how long does the training have to be, or what do you do with your disclosures, or but generally it's so very similar that you can see, okay, these are my pieces, let me just figure out how to best fit them into whatever you're looking at. So I think that's kind of where you can get creative and learn the culture about, well, what are people's pain points. At the job that I'm at currently right now, people, where it's a startup basically, so everybody is just 100 miles an hour all the time, and so the idea of trying to capture 45 minutes of somebody's time once a quarter for compliance training, mind-boggling. People are like, I'm not going to have that time. Where am I going to find that time? I'm working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, or whatever. So it's figuring out like, okay, well, do you have 2 minutes? Because if you have 2 minutes, I can talk to you or do a little training session or a microburst, video. And then that 2 minutes over the next 3 months is going to add up to 45 minutes. So, like, oh, you didn't realize you did 45 minutes of training. That's cool. But in the mining job, it was a majority of our workforce was not sitting in front of a computer every day. So how do you reach them? How do you make sure that they understand that all of the rules apply to them too? But then if they have questions or issues or problems, they still have avenues to speak up, and it's not just a one-way street. So it's kind of cool because, the 7 elements of a compliance program are the 7 elements of a compliance program, but like each of those different elements or pieces is going to just look oh so different when you fit it into the culture that you're looking at, like in the job that you're at. So
yeah, I think it's cool that you've had kind of such a diversity of experience. And yeah, I mean, the 7 elements can be applied in so many different ways, right? If I tell you there's something that has wheels and a drivetrain and an engine and, an ignition key and something to steer it, then you're like, okay, I know exactly what that is, but that could be like a motorcycle or a car or a tractor or any number of things. And those things are all very different, but that's what we need to do as ethics leaders is say, hey, these kind of common components need to be applied in this specific situation.
Yep, exactly. So, and that's kind of the fun of it for me, right? Is learning the culture, figuring out like, all right, how am I going to make this work? I know what needs to be done, and I don't need to explain to myself why it's important. But A, not everybody finds compliance interesting and fun, and B, this isn't everybody's job. So their full-time job is something so totally different. And how do I fit into their world, their life, their time to make it so that it connects to what they're doing and still make sure that they're, on the right path.
Yeah. So let's talk about scale a little bit. Oh, sorry. What's that? Oh, let's talk about scale a little bit. You've been at a company with like 10,000 employees and a company with less than 500 employees. And I love how you talk about it, Emily. You're focused on making compliance relevant, right? Like this is not just there's a regulation and thou must do this. Our job as compliance leaders is to influence behavior, right? We need to like get things into the minds of humans that influence their behavior that help build a culture. And, knowing the regulation or, the requirements for, like you said, training time or something is only the start of it. So talk to me about how you kind of approach relevance and kind of getting into the, the audience, the employee base across such different sets of employees.
So it's different. It's obviously different in every position and company that I've held. at the mining company, for example, compliance was pretty well integrated. It had been around for a while. People understood that there were rules, there was a code of conduct, there was training that needed to be happen. So our unique, problem to solve was less making people understand about compliance and more making it applicable, making it accessible, and making it fun. It's not the same thing all the time, every time, right? But again, not everybody outside the compliance world thinks that compliance is fun. So how do you do that? In the opposite side of things, my position right now, when I started, I was employee number 25. So there wasn't even a conversation around, okay, what does compliance training look like? Do you have a training calendar? Do you have, do you have all of these things? It was like, okay, hold on. Let me put all of the pieces into place. Right now we sit at just under 700 employees, and I've been there for about a year and a half. So exponential growth.
Wow.
But it has given me the opportunity to new hires now get code of conduct training from day one. Like, there's no question about it. It's not when are they going to get signed up? How often are we doing it? It is day one, they get their code of conduct training. They get an introductory to compliance training where they meet the team. They get to learn about like policies and how they're developed, and if they need to create new policies, how to do that. They get to learn about where the whistleblower options are, what happens when you speak up, what kind of protections are in place. So it's like a totally different world than like very established companies.
Yeah.
But it comes with its own set of problems as well, because it's, like I said, a fast growing startup company. But it's totally different than what I've seen in previous roles. So it's, I can't even compare. It's not apples to apples. It's like apples to oranges at this point.
Yeah, sure. But that's pretty cool. You got to be there early and establish some norms about how compliance was going to be handled. And you got to kind of put your own spin on it and, have the program be, the way that you thought like was going to serve the company and the mission well. And then, it's scaled like almost 30 times. It's almost 30 times bigger than when you got there, which is super cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also one of those that what's working right now, I know in 6 months probably won't work. So I have to be kind of constantly thinking ahead to decide, all right, how are we going to pivot next to keep this, established level of compliance training and introductory pieces there without getting lost in the noise, especially as we continue to grow. So
yeah, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
So let's maybe get to some stories here and see if there's some kind of learning or some interesting things. Tell us a little bit about your time at Yeti. I mean, everyone's got to love Yeti, right? That's got to be like a top 10 brand. People have like stickers on their cars, and I haven't seen a lot of tattoos, but I bet some people have a Yeti tattoo. So. Maybe have you seen?
I haven't seen Yeti tattoos.
I feel like people are huge fans of Yetis. We'll just leave it there.
I would agree with that, and it is definitely. I feel like there's a battle between Yeti and Stanley. I will always be on the side of Yeti. They were a great place to work. So,
just tell me about what was it like there? Like what was kind of unique about your experience? Because I mean, you were there while I'm sure that company was growing a bunch too while you were there.
Yeah, they were a lot bigger when I started. They'd already gone public, so there's, some obvious requirements that a company needs before they go public. So I didn't have to, worry, I guess, about do you have a hotline? Do you have policies? Do you have a code of conduct? Things like that. So that was all already there. But what was cool is my Yeti roles, I could step in, look at the pieces that were already there and say, all right, how can we build on this? How can we make this better? How can we further push to integrate compliance into the culture when, everybody knows we have a code of conduct? Cool. All right. So how do we get that to be trained up? How do we get it to be more exciting? How do we have fun with it? So it was nice because, like I said, every piece wasn't done, but there was enough pieces just there to be like, okay, I see the direction. Let's keep going and let's see what it's going to look like. So we did some really fun. I did some really fun things at Yeti. We did like a monthly newsletter with the Second City biz shorts, those real biz shorts, which when you have people who actually come up to you after the newsletters come out and go, that was really funny. And like, that's all I needed. You didn't have to read the rest of the newsletter. As long as you watched the video, I will call that a win.
Yeah. Watch the video and also give me a compliment, and then we're good.
I mean, also give me the compliments. Give me all of the compliments. But yeah, so it was, we did things like that. But we also got to create some cool training video or web-based training videos that were applicable to Yeti, its growth that was happening, but then also like, hey, paying nod to, we're still kind of a small company. Like some of the big problems that you see at bigger companies aren't here yet, but keep them in mind. If you see somebody that does this, that could cause problems down the road. So it's kind of setting them up for future growth and future potential risks without like waving all the red flags and saying, oh my God, this is going to be such a problem. Like it's more like, let's just sneak this into your subconscious now so that when it does happen, you're like, oh, I had a training about that. I'm gonna reach out to the compliance team and see if they can answer a question, or, I'm gonna ask somebody about this. So it's kind of a cool opportunity.
Yeah, I really love that frame, and it's so smart to think about it that way and present it that way, because like the way my mind works is that like if you're told about that beforehand and then you see it, right? Especially if you're told about it in a non-threatening way, not like if this ever happens, we're going to get you, but just that's such a cool frame to say, hey, you know what? We're not dealing with these problems yet because our culture is tight, or, we're not at this scale, or we just haven't been there yet, but keep an eye out for this. It feels like that's a lot easier for people to say like, okay, yeah, like if that's not happening and it's good now, let's try to keep that from happening. It's probably a lot easier to kind of get that buy-in and get people thinking about that. Maybe than it is coming in and saying, hey, you guys got to stop this, like you guys are all wrong and you guys are bad guys.
Yeah, exactly. So I like to think that there's some, there was some future paths strewn when I was there. Sometimes you kind of wish you could go back to jobs and be like, hey, how's it going? And like check in on things. You can't do that, and that's okay. But yeah, it gave us the opportunity to talk about there's some things we might be seeing in the future. So we're going to sprinkle them in and see that, that they're there. The seeds have been planted. So
yeah. Is there a rule against that? Can you not go and say like, what's going on with training over here?
I mean, I don't think there's a rule, but it just feels weird to me. I guess maybe because since I left Yeti, there's been so many people that left from the compliance team that it's just different. It's a different group of people now. So I could probably reach out and just say, hey, I was there a couple of years ago. Would you, fill me in? But
yeah, it's a little weird. I get it.
It's a little weird.
Maybe I'll just get the Yeti team on the ethics experts, and I'll go on a little fact-finding mission for you. I'll send you the recording.
Perfect.
And then how about the mining company? What was kind of notable about that? That was like a bit big, probably even bigger than Yeti when you got there. You said it was pretty established. What are some things that you're proud of during that time there, or you felt like you drove some improvement and transformation in?
So yeah, very well established, had 30,000 plus employees. So a huge company in comparison. And I think some of the cool stuff that I got to do was improve on processes. So there was, processes existed. There were ways to, submit your conflicts of interest disclosure. And they had a timing of like every couple years it was done this way. And I think when I started, it was done in like a spreadsheet. And so you just had like a big Excel spreadsheet with people's answers to it. And you'd have to kind of like highlight the answers and follow up. Very manual process. But it existed. It was there. It worked. But I got to take that and find a solution that was a lot more automated, that was easy to access by phones and computers. Because again, like I said, we had a huge employee population that was not sitting in front of a computer all day, every day. And so how do you connect with them? How do you reach them? And how do you make the processes that exist that much better or that much easier? So it was not about making huge, giant changes to the program, because the program was good. It was there, but it was making it easier, making it more accessible, making it just a little bit less strict, I guess, and more like, all right, we see the change in the workforce, and we've got people who are retiring and younger people coming in. So like what used to work 10 years ago is not going to work in 2 years, and things like that. So it was kind of a cool opportunity to just see really well established processes and then figure out how to make them work just a little bit better. So
Cool. That's exciting.
yeah.
So talk to me about kind of where you are and what you're excited about going forward. Like, maybe start by, how do you invest in yourself to help you become a better leader, right? You're in this fast growing company. You've seen it at, I think you said 17,000 employees or whatever. It's growing a bunch every year. How do you invest in yourself and kind of prepare for the next year or two?
Yeah. So I think the taking advantage of all the webinars and podcasts that exist out there, learning about what other people are seeing, what the trends they're seeing, but then also what the pitfalls that they're running into, what are hurdles that they're just not getting over, or battles that they've won in creative ways. So it's just staying connected with the compliance community, going to conferences when I can, meeting people in person, connecting with them via LinkedIn, and seeing like what they're sharing and what they're posting. So I think in a weird way, the compliance community is usually very open to sharing about what's worked, what hasn't worked. Oh, we did this and it was cool, but if I could do it again, I would change this. And so there's so many resources out there, so that I try to just consume as much of it as I can, while still recognizing that I, have a full-time job and I'd like to have a life outside of work. So it's finding that balance of consuming new content, trying to apply it to my current role, looking forward, looking back, what didn't go right, what did go right, things like that. It's just kind of like it's a epic juggling act, if you will.
Yeah, I'm sure it is, but you're great at it. And, so much of us in compliance have to learn to do that. Like, as much as we'd love to, we can't spend the whole weekend reading DOJ guidance. We got to get out of the job and enjoy our life on our own.
Yep.
But we also got to, make some room for, getting better and investing in ourselves, because the whole company's counting on us, right? We have to be the ones to lead in this way while everyone's focused on a bunch of other things, to lead, our culture of ethics forward.
Exactly. So it's nice when there are so many experts out there that will distill some of the harder topics. So, the new DOJ guidelines, or rule changes, regulatory requirements, etc., so that you can kind of get it in bite-sized hour-long pieces rather than spending your whole entire weekend reading articles. So I also appreciate that there's other people that do spend their entire weekends reading and dissecting and figuring it all out, so then I can digest that in a little smaller snippet throughout the day.
Yeah, that's great. So, as you look out over the next year, tell me something that you're excited about, maybe that you don't even have planned yet, or maybe that you're ready to launch. Or maybe one way to think about it is, if you could wave a magic wand in a year from now, you would have this upgrade, this improvement, this, change in your program. What would that be? Tell me excitement or wishes. Just tell me your wish list.
My wish list is huge, if I'm being honest. Because we have so much opportunity to grow over the next few years, what I'd like to see is a little bit more of compliance just being baseline, like there's no question of like, do you have integrity? It's how do you like elevate it one more step? In a perfect world, right?
Yeah.
In a more realistic world, I'd love to see, employees feel comfortable talking to compliance about not just compliance related topics, knowing that if we come by and say hi, it's not a scary thing. It's not like, oh, you're in trouble, but just like, we are real people. We're humans. Remember, you can come talk to us. Like, show me your pictures of your cats or your dogs, or like, tell me what you did over the weekend or whatever. So creating that kind of comfort zone where people are coming to talk to me as a compliance person in the company, but not just because I'm the compliance person, but because I'm just the face that they see every day. So just building that level of comfort within, all of the people that we see and interact with, and even the people that we don't, and reaching remote workers or people who don't hybrid at the same time as you is, I think, going to be the hardest hurdle, just to make sure that we're not leaving anybody behind. So.
Yeah, kind of getting that kind of maybe broader and deeper engagement, kind of beyond just that base participation that you checked the box on your training and filled out your conflict of interest form, but getting some of that deeper engagement. When everyone's busy, right? Everyone's got a lot of stuff going on.
Yep.
No one's at least going to admit it and say, yeah, I got a bunch of extra time. I'll do as much training as you want. But I think it's more getting that, kind of winning over the hearts and minds and kind of getting placed in the minds of the middle managers and the frontline employees that this is the role that I want to play in helping our company achieve our mission.
Exactly. So everybody likes to talk about tone from the top, which is super important. You can't have an ethics culture if not everybody's following the rules. But I think a lot of times people forget about all of the other levels because, 9 times out of 10, nobody's going to stop the CEO in the hallway and be like, hi, how are you doing? How's your day going? But they are going to see their manager on a regular basis. So they're going to see their manager's manager on a regular basis. So just making sure that kind of permeates all the levels of the culture throughout the whole company. So yeah, that's the goal. We got a lot of things lined up for 2025, but none of them I can share quite yet. So.
Ooh, it sounds like we might be doing a round 2 in a year, and then you could tell us how great they went.
Let's hope so. That will be the positive of this whole thing.
Okay, cool. Have you found any, novel or especially helpful ways to engage that mood in the middle? It sounds like you've, had some senior buy-in and you've been at companies where, people recognize that compliance and ethics is essential. Have you had any ways that you found were particularly helpful to get those middle managers engaged and, maybe not every single one of them, but build some advocates and allies outside of the compliance department?
Yeah, I don't know if it's been like super successful, but I do find that there's success in incentivizing compliance a little bit. People love
The
swag.
DOJ will love to hear that.
I mean, not like that, but like people love swag, right? They love stickers, they love things. So like having it just be a little bit more like, hey, come engage with us. Put your name in a hat for a hat, maybe. Or, if you can get 10 conversations about integrity in the workplace with your direct employees and mark them down and record them, put you in a drawing for, something else. So
yeah, give them a t-shirt or a mug or something.
Exactly.
Give them a
Yeti. Give them a Yeti. No conflict of interest there at all. So
okay, that's
like,
cool.
Yeah,
a little
that
sweepstakes, a little drawing. And This is not just the Office of No coming around, but making sure that we all have a role to play in a culture of ethics. And, we've seen some studies that show a really tight correlation between someone viewing their manager as someone who's ethical, right, by having those conversations about integrity and things like that, and employee retention or admiration or willingness to follow that manager. And those are some great ways to kind of push that out and say, hey, we're not just here to say you can't do this and you're going to get in trouble, but we're trying to not just get people in trouble for doing bad things. We're trying to push a culture of integrity and ethics. And, that's got to be in the interest of every middle manager.
Exactly. And I think that and sitting down with people physically, virtually, whatever, middle managers, and just asking, what are your pain points? Like, what are you hearing? Because they tend to be that first line for, people having home troubles or people not enjoying the culture at work, or somebody's having, issues with a friend or whatever. So like they tend to be kind of that. I like to think of it as like the bartender who listens to all your problems. The managers tend to be that person. So reaching out to them and sitting down with them and saying, hey, like, where are your pain points? Where are you seeing issues, problems, whatever? And it doesn't have to be like an hour-long meeting, but just like a quick little, hey, where's you at? Like green, yellow, red, what's the temperature gauge here? And just trying to create that rapport and that connection like I was talking about before, so that if something is going wrong or something happens, they already know that you're listening to them, so that they'll reach out to you and bring those issues up to your attention.
Yeah, that's great. So as we're heading toward wrapping up here, is there anything that we haven't talked about, or anything that you want to leave the audience with, that is either on your mind or you're excited about, or you want to encourage people about?
Tons of stuff. But I think it goes back to the question you asked me about, like, how do I, take care of myself and make myself a better professional? I think that's a good reminder to everybody, right? Like, we forget sometimes that we are not the experts of everything. And so it is a good thing to get uncomfortable and learn about new topics, or be unsure of what the answers are, and go out there and like find people who know those answers. Listening to people talk on podcasts like this, or attending a webinar on a topic that you haven't really touched on, or not really a risk issue or area in your business, but still knowing that it's there and out there, and just making those connections, I think is important to remember. But also hard to remember, because we are all so stretched thin. It's not like anybody has, an unlimited budget and a perfect amount of, head count working for them. And it's, that's never the case. But knowing that none of us are alone out here. There is no such thing as a compliance officer island. And that, there's a great community to keep in touch with, and to connect with, and to reach out to and ask questions of. So I think that's probably my last thought for our conversation.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily. Yeah, it's it's a great point that, you're not alone, that there are a bunch of peers and colleagues across this industry that are dealing with some of the same things, whether it's the personal things about, worry or stress, or, trying to, figure out how to push through this, or the more tactical things about what's a great way to roll out this training or get some better traction with managers. I think it's a balance that we all need to strike as ethics experts, where, it kind of goes back to what we started talking about, that willingness to jump into a problem, jump into something that's not exactly scripted and everyone knows exactly how to apply this. I think we're always trying to balance that willingness to be a problem solver and to be someone who makes a positive difference in the world, with this desire to have some order and reliability, and know that we can, deliver on our commitments for ROI and things like that. And, I would just encourage everyone that tension and that need for balance is why it's so necessary for the world to have compliance and ethics leaders, because those things are not easy, and your job isn't easy. And we hear you, we're with you, and we're cheering you on. But also just recognize that tension that you live in, when you invest in yourself as a professional and do your self-care and get the right team around you, that tension is the reason why we all have a job. And that's the reason why companies need this to be figured out, because compliance and ethics doesn't just naturally happen by everyone self-sorting into the right roles. And that's why you're needed. And hopefully you can take some comfort in that those things that are so hard for you are also the reason why you're so valuable.
Yep, I agree. That's, perfect way to wrap that up, Gio.
All right. Well, it's been great spending some time with you, Emily. I appreciate you coming on and sharing with us about your career and the compliance programs that you've led across a wide range of industries. And it's been really encouraging. It's great to see the way that you approach this, and you're looking to be innovative and engaging people on the front lines, and at middle managers. And you know what? We're all just figuring it out. And I'm excited to hear how the secret 2025 plan goes.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks so much, Emily. This has been a great episode.
Thank you, Gio.